What would you do if you returned home after years of chasing wealth and success, only to walk into your mansion's kitchen and find your only son laughing and cooking with the maid you barely noticed when you hired her? What if that maid carried a secret that could destroy everything you thought you knew about loyalty, family, and betrayal? Stay with me till the end of this story, because what happens inside that kitchen will leave you breathless. And before we dive in, make sure you hit subscribe right now, so you never miss more unbelievable, life-changing stories like this, because, trust me, you're going to want to hear every twist of this one. The millionaire's name was Richard Cole, a man whose name echoed through skyscrapers, stock markets, and luxury car auctions across America and beyond, but who, ironically, had allowed his personal life to crumble quietly while his empire grew louder each year. After spending a decade expanding his businesses abroad, Richard finally decided to return to the one place he had once called home, his family mansion tucked away in the leafy outskirts of Connecticut. He thought he knew what to expect. His son, now a grown young man, cold and distant, like the father who had missed half his childhood, and the staff faceless employees who kept the estate polished like a museum, but devoid of warmth. But Richard wasn't prepared for what he walked into that late afternoon when the driver dropped him at the front gates. The mansion smelled faintly of fresh bread and fried onions, scents completely foreign to the sterile housekeeper routines. He remembered. His curiosity piqued. Richard rolled his suitcase across the marbled floor, each step echoing against the grand walls, decorated with priceless art. He expected silence, or at best, the quiet shuffle of servants. Instead, he heard laughter, light, genuine, almost childlike. Him. For a moment, it sounded so unfamiliar, he froze in disbelief. Following the sound, he found himself at the door of the kitchen, a place he rarely entered, even during his earlier years at the mansion. The sight inside stopped him cold. There, by the counter, stood his only son, Michael, in a simple t-shirt and jeans, flipping vegetables in a pan like he had done it 100 times, his face glowing with joy. Beside him stood a young black woman, dressed in the modest uniform of a maid, her hair tied back neatly, her hands moving quickly as she kneaded dough with practiced skill, laughing at something Michael said. The two of them looked so comfortable, so natural together, as though this kitchen wasn't just a workplace, but the beating heart of the home. For the first time in years, Richard felt like an outsider in his own house, and that unsettled him. Richard cleared his throat, and both Michael and the maid froze. Michael turned, his smile fading slightly, replaced by that careful, guarded look Richard hated, but had grown used to. The maid, however, didn't bow her head like most staff had done before him. Instead, she met his gaze with steady eyes that carried something more than submission. "Dad," Michael finally said, breaking the tension. "You're home." Richard forced a smile, but his voice carried the chill of suspicion. "Yes, I am. And who might this be?" Michael hesitated, glancing at the maid before answering. "This is Naomi. She's new here, helps around the house. But more than that, she's my friend." Friend. The word stung Richard more than it should have. Since when did his son form friendships with household staff? What boundaries had blurred in his absence? And why did Naomi look at him like she already knew more about him than he'd prefer? But Richard decided to stay quiet for now. He simply nodded and excused himself, retreating upstairs to his study. Yet the image of his son and the maid together wouldn't leave his mind. There was something about Naomi, her confidence, her ease, her closeness to Michael, that unsettled him far more than he cared to admit. What was her real story? And why, deep down, did Richard feel she had entered his home, not just to clean and cook, but to change everything? Richard had always believed control was the essence of power, control of markets, control of employees, control of his image. But the moment he saw Naomi with Michael, he realized control inside his own home had slipped away. Days passed, and Richard observed quietly noting how Naomi had seamlessly woven herself into the mansion's daily life. She didn't just serve meals. She sat with Michael to eat them when invited. She didn't just tidy the living room. She listened to Michael's stories, laughed at his jokes, and occasionally challenged him with sharp, intelligent remarks that revealed she wasn't the quiet servant her job title suggested. Richard, curious and irritated, ordered a discreet background check. The report stunned him. Naomi Johnson, 24, raised in foster care, a record of working odd jobs, and most surprising, of how she had once applied for a scholarship program funded by Richard's own company, but was denied. It seemed like coincidence, but Richard didn't believe in coincidences. His suspicions deepened one evening, when he overheard Michael and Naomi talking in hushed voices by the garden. Michael confessed something Richard never expected to hear. "I don't care if my dad doesn't approve. You're the only person who's been real with me. You make this house feel like a home, Naomi, not a prison." Richard's chest tightened with a mix of anger and guilt. A prison. Was that how his son saw the life he had provided? Lavish wealth, but absent love. Determined to confront Naomi, Richard called her into his study the next morning. She entered, calmly, unflinching. "Naomi," he began, "I need to understand something. Why are you really here? Is this about money? About influence?" Naomi smiled faintly, her voice steady. "I'm here because Michael needed someone to listen. Someone to remind him he's more than your heir or your shadow. I didn't come to take anything from you, Mr. Cole. But maybe you should ask yourself what you've given him that truly matters." Her words stung like truth always does. Yet Richard wasn't convinced. His instincts screamed there was more. And he was right. That night, searching Naomi's quarters, Richard stumbled upon an old envelope tucked under her mattress. Inside were faded letters and one photograph. The photo showed Naomi's mother, a woman Richard recognized immediately. She had been part of his past, long before his wealth, long before his marriage. A woman he had once loved, but left behind in his climb for success. And now her daughter Naomi was standing in his home, close to his son, possibly seeking revenge or reparation. The realization sent Richard into turmoil. Could it be that Naomi was here, not by chance, but by blood and history, carrying secrets that could unravel everything he had built? The storm finally broke one night, when Richard decided he could no longer hide the truth. He called both Michael and Naomi into the kitchen, the very place where it all began. The marble counters gleamed under the warm lights, but the tension was ice cold. Richard placed the photograph on the counter. "Care to explain this?" he demanded. Naomi's eyes flickered to the photo, then back at Richard, unwavering. Michael looked between them, confused. "Dad, what's going on?" Richard's voice cracked with the weight of decades. "Naomi isn't just some maid, Michael. She's the daughter of a woman I once knew, a woman I left behind." Which means he hesitated, his breath heavy. "Which means she might be your sister." The silence that followed was suffocating. Michael stepped back, shock written all over his face. Naomi, however, stepped forward, her voice calm but sharp. "Might be no, Mr. Cole? I am. My mother told me the truth before she died. I came here not to destroy you, but to see for myself the man who abandoned us, and to see if Michael deserved the brother or the sister he never knew he had." Michael's world spun. Betrayal from his father, hidden blood ties, and the sudden shift of Naomi, from friend to family. Anger surged. "You knew, all these years. Dad, you never thought I deserved the truth." Richard's shoulders sagged under the weight of his choices. "I was a coward. I thought burying the past would protect the future. I was wrong." Naomi, tears in her eyes now, turned to Michael. "I never meant to hurt you. You were the only light in this house. The only one who treated me like I mattered. I just wanted you to know the truth, that you're not alone, and neither am I." Asterisk in that kitchen, decades of lies shattered. Michael, torn between fury and relief, finally said, "Family isn't about money or secrets, it's about honesty. And maybe it's time we start over, not as father and son, trapped in silence, but as a family that finally speaks the truth." Asterisk Richard, humbled and broken, nodded. For the first time, he realized his empire meant nothing if it cost him the people he loved most. The millionaire who had returned home found more than he bargained for. He found redemption, a sister for his son, and a second chance to rebuild not his wealth, but his family. Asterisk, and it all began in that kitchen, with a maid who was never just a maid, and a son who was never just an heir, but the key to unlocking the truth of a past that refused to stay buried.